Good morning, good evening. For those of you listening from wherever you're listening, this is the Philly Investor Podcast. And today we have a very, very, very special guest, my friend Mike Riverso. How you doing, Mike?
Very well, David. Good morning.
Good morning. So for those of you that, well, probably none of you know Mike, um, Mike and I have worked together for how many years?
13.
Wow. Wow. That's a long time. I didn't realize it'd been that long. Um, we when I
Yeah.
say we work together, we collaborate on transactions. I consider Mike to be an expert at real estate from the investment side, from the value sides. At one point, Mike used to run all of the sheriff sales for Philadelphia County for tax sale and mortgages. So rather than me tell the audience, Mike, why don't you share a little bit about your background in real estate and
Uh,
how?
yeah, my background is when I started out, it was just the sheriff office. I've never been an agent. Um, my background is in homes that are in distress in one way, shape, or form
Mhm.
um, on the investor side. So the start was a good start. And it was way back when things were a little bit different price wise, but it catapulted me into so-called wholesale industry that wasn't really uh, weren't many people doing it over a decade ago.
Right.
uh, so things have changed,
Yeah.
and basically my forte is seeing the value, the ARV, the potential of a property from issues, zoning, L&I to construction cost, location, so forth and so on.
Right.
Um, uh, and closing the deal and explaining how
Right.
that goes on.
Right.
That's basically what I do.
So,
So,
what I'd really like to do is kind of maybe drill down on that a little bit, because I think the thought of selling a property for a lot of people, uh, you know, Joe Sixpack, anyone who has never done it before, or anyone who's never, as far as investment property, and anyone who's never sold a property, let's say out of an estate, for example, because a lot of the transactions that we've done over the years are an estate. An estate means when a family member or friend passes on, and then permitted, you're given permission by the courts, the probate courts, to act as that person's representative on earth because dead people don't sign deeds, and you're in charge of the estate. So, and the problem is a lot of times that, when people inherit that kind of property, um, there's complications. For
yes,
example, the condition of the property. There could be a squatter living there. There could be a holdover tenant. The property may have been vandalized. So, why don't you talk a little bit about that? Like, maybe
well,
you can think of like some
most
transactions
of
that
the
you've done.
time,
Like,
those those issues can be alleviated, you know, quickly uh, with our experience. The
yeah,
major factors are the legal issues
yeah,
uh, that we've incurred. Sometimes uh, there's more than one person involved. There is an executive administrator who
yeah,
basically calls the shots, but there's others.
yeah,
And then it could become a tangled mess that could last for years, as we well know.
absolutely.
Was the decedents were they actually married? You know, um,
Uh,
is it actually? have they, has everybody in the family been put on notice? Is
Yeah.
there a will? Has it been probated? So forth and so on. It could be a 6 week thing or it could be a 6 year thing. So going into it, you really don't know. Um, we have one that's been going on for 7 years, I think. Um, right?
The one in South Philly.
Yes, 21st
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah.
So, and I've done them recently in a month. So they can be fruitful because it's usually the family just wants to get rid of it.
Right.
But there's some extra baggage could come along with that they
Yeah.
don't really know, and they find out after the fact. And the worst, the thing is, it becomes a family thing,
Yeah.
and
A struggle.
it can get it can get a little hairy there, and so we could offer to help, do the estate, but in
Well,
terms of family,
okay,
uh,
so let's talk about that. So, the perception for most people is if they want to sell a property, all they have to do is go on Google and type in
yeah,
real estate, and whoever's on Google there, Remax, Berkshire Hathaway, um, whatever the brokerage company might be,
right,
larger or small, all they have to do is contact them and they can, sell grandmom's house, um, out of an estate. And it's just that simple. And you and I both know that that's really not the case,
yeah,
that the public has a misperception many times
yeah,
of most brokers, just like they do of lawyers. I think they a lot of times,
yeah. It's because
or
it's something that they haven't done before.
say again,
It's
repeat
something
that.
that they have not experienced most likely,
Well,
so they're
say
learning
more about that.
along.
Say more about that.
Well, m- most of the people that we've had or have done these deals with have never been an executor or administrator, or
No, but
they
I meant
just
from the
think that they need
right.
from the
Well,
lot plan.
I'm saying they believe that they could just go to a broker or they can go to a
Right,
lawyer and that solves everything.
right.
So can you speak
Yeah.
on that? Like what your experience of that is?
Well, most of the time they think that they just need the death certificate in order to sell. Well, in some cases between a husband and wife, yes, but when it's not a husband and wife situation,
Yeah.
and also how the deed was written up, what the right of survivorship deed,
Yeah.
to come down to how the deed, um, is there a will? Um, and so a lot of people don't, surmise that the laws are what they think they are, but they're not. And they're a little taken back sometimes that they have to do this estate because there's family members that pay the money for it. Well, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, it doesn't work that way. So that roadblock sometimes.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to share that they're selling the property, um, which we have experienced.
Yeah.
So it's not so much the house getting it under contract. The contract, getting it under contract at the right price in this particular instance is actually the easiest part. It's actually the
Right.
easiest part because they have no really vested interest in the property. Most of the time, most of the time, it's an as is property, dated, and they realize it. But another thing that could be experienced is grandmom had a reverse mortgage that no one knew about.
Yeah.
And uh, for much more than the property's worth, which we've seen. And at that point, you know, they're taken back. We offered 65,000 as an example. Well, we offered the open state, everything's going smoothly. Then the title report comes back and the property owes $142,000.
Right.
So that's basically not a deal. And after we've had time and money and effort put into this, checks to us as well,
Well,
because
I guess what I
who lent this amount?
right. So, but I guess what I want to focus on is, for someone in that position, and let's say they go, okay, well, grandma died, you know, and I want to sell the house. I don't want to put money into it because to fix it, it's going to cost 50, 60, $70,000. Can I just sell it the way it is? And so firsthand experience, both you and I have spoken to people like this where they call, the Remaxes of the world and they say, hey, I want to sell my house. And the agent that comes out has no idea how to walk the owner of the property through raising the estate. And that's something that you and I have both done as
And
part of the transaction, and
normally it's not in their
normally,
best interest.
sorry,
But normally it's they feel as though maybe it's not in their best interest to do all this legwork, and
you're
they're
talking
just
about the
selling.
agents,
What's that?
you're talking about the brokers.
And all this legwork for their 3% commission,
Oh,
and trying to get maybe trying to get the seller to do a little bit of work,
uh-huh.
so it looks a little nicer, so we can get a little bit more money. And they're not really into doing that. They just want to basically a cash as is offer with a quick close, um, and then the estate process. You know, um, they may want somebody to put up the money to do that, or a lawyer, and the brokers, sometimes they don't want to be bothered with it. So that's a good thing for us.
Right,
Yeah,
right. But
they
sometimes,
can't guarantee a cash offer for
but my experience also, and maybe you could speak on this, is if the family goes through a broker and the broker says, well, once you go raise the estate, then maybe I'll list it. But hey, the property needs work. I've heard people say, well, if you do this, 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 and this, then I'll list your property, but I can't sell it the way it is. So, you know, there's that. Or
right.
if they say, okay, fine, I'm going to go raise that estate. Let me go find an estate lawyer. A lot of times the family doesn't have the money to pay a retainer to that attorney, let's say five or $10,000 to help, raise grandma mom's estate. So they just say, all right, well, once I save the money, but the problem with that is that it could take, many people years and years and years to save that kind of money, if at all. And by the time they do it, a lot of times they could lose the property to a mortgage foreclosure, or they could lose the property to a tax sale.
Yeah,
When you were working for the sheriff's department, you were in charge of tax sales, correct?
yeah, yes,
Yeah. And how many times did you see people lose properties that were part of an estate just because they didn't move quickly enough to pay off the
yeah.
taxes or the mortgage?
It happens every month.
It happens every month, right?
Yeah,
Or it's a whole thing where, let's say they do have the money, but no one in the family can decide who it, because there was no will, who
right.
is going to be in charge of the estate because nobody trusts
Yeah,
anybody.
and
And there's not a third party like a lawyer or someone like
right,
us to
and
step in and say, hey, look, you know, let's have a conversation. Let's come up with a solution
yes,
so
and
that we can catch it.
the city is not going to show much sympathy on a property like this, because uh, the occupant is passed on.
Correct.
So, they're not worried about putting someone on the street or
Right.
something like
Right.
that.
Right.
So, that holds a lot of water on in
Right.
terms of they want to get paid, and it's all according to how much is owed. And you only have 45 days to make this decision. So, which is not a lot of time, and they have to come up with at least 50% nowadays to
Fifty
to get
percent of
on
what though? 50% of what?
50%, 50% of the total of taxes, and basically not just taxes, it's whatever is owed to the municipality of Philadelphia, not just taxes. Could
Say
be
more.
L&O,
What do you mean?
it could be many times. There is the water company could sell your property on a sheriff's sale.
Uh,
The gas company, L&I liens. There's four major factors, and that's all added together
oh,
with the taxes. It's
so
one lump sum.
you might owe 10,000 in taxes, but you also might owe 8,000 in a water
Right.
bill, and you might
And
owe
right. And
$5,000 worth of liens.
if it's let's say it's a vacant lot,
Hmm.
where there was within the past 21 years there was a house on that lot. Well, then there's
Right.
going to be a significant tear down lien between
Demolition.
23 and $33,000. So that accrued with the taxes, the former water bill, gas bill, L&I. Sometimes this vacant lot, wherever it may be, could owe over $50,000. And to get it off the list, you would have to come up with $25,000
Right.
and then go on a payment plan. So um, most of the properties that are lost are lots, are vacant lots in areas where it's just underwater. The property, the vacant lot's worth 15,000, and it's going to cost 50,000 to clear title.
Right.
And and usually the administrator executor has no idea any of this is owed. So it becomes a surprise. And it also becomes a deal breaker for people like us. So,
Right. Does any estate transaction that we've done in the last couple years stand out to you? That
yes, as a matter of fact,
had
as
we
a matter
not
of
been
fact,
involved, the property, who
well,
knows?
let's start with the last one, which in Frankfurt, the Twin, where, we were going back and forth, and we put it under contract with what we thought was the decedent's wife,
Right.
which she
Yeah.
is first in line to sign that contract under Pennsylvania state law.
The problem was they were never married.
Problem was, right,
Yeah.
after the fact, when we were asked to produce, she had to produce. She produced the death certificate very quickly,
Mhm.
but when asked for a marriage certificate license, that couldn't be produced.
Correct.
So um, there the issues started because there were promises made that this would be her house after X amount of time. The man had died at a young age,
Yes.
and the property was actually owned by his aunt or mother, or
No, no, his
forget,
sister.
sister.
It's,
So
the names on the deed. Well, it was a bit more complicated than that because
right,
the names on the deed was his mother and his sister.
yes,
And I said, well, his name's not on the deed. She said, well, the sister agreed to sell him the house. I said,
right,
okay, can you produce an agreement of sale? No. All right. Can you
yeah,
produce any receipts? No. Can you produce anything that backs up what you're saying? She said, no. And then when I go to talk to the sister, she said, well, I never did any kind of contract with him. I said I would do it, but then, nothing happened. He never,
right,
he never, they never had a meeting of the minds around price, around anything. So I said, well,
yeah,
it looks like you own the house. But the problem then became that when the mother passed away, she made him the executor for the estate of the mother. So now, in order for her to be able to sell the house, we had to raise his estate plus petition the court to let her become the new administrator for the estate. So, these get very complicated, and you actually have to know the law and follow the law. The problem is a lot of times when it comes to these things, like for example, his children, of which he had 4 or 5 children, also believed that he owned the house.
Yeah,
And
his one daughter in particular.
right. Well, the one daughter claimed to speak for all the children.
Yeah,
And what I offered to do is put them all on a Zoom call. And on the Zoom call, I can demonstrate to all of them that it's one thing to believe something, another thing is to be able to prove it in a court of law. And they have no evidence to prove anything.
right.
However, we do need their help in order to raise the father's estate. And um, my suggestion was just to make a deal with their aunt, with which she wasn't opposed um, to get proceeds from the sale of the home. And it gets into the whole emotional thing. It gets into the whole I believe this and I'm emotional
That's a
about it,
big
thinking it's
factor.
true. And I have to a lot of times have, and you as well, difficult conversations with people about
Yes.
what's reality and what isn't reality. And a lot of times, people like to kill the messenger, so to speak. And I ask them not
Yeah.
to. And I ask them also, don't believe what I'm saying. Go out and consult with attorneys and go consult with brokers
Yeah.
and see if what I'm saying is correct or not. And when they do, they go, you know what? He was telling the truth. And they go, well, I'll just go out and hire, a lawyer. I said, great, you go and do that. And they come back to me and go, oh, uh, hey, David, can we still do what you suggested? I said, yeah, but can I ask you a question? They said, yes, of course. Hey, what happened when you went to hire the attorney? Well, he said he can do this and he could do that. I said, uh-huh. I said, and so why don't you hire him? Well, he
Right.
wanted 5,000. He wanted 10,000. One time, I always remember this. I went to a closing on a triplex in Philadelphia. And that was unusual because normally it's a family member that comes to the closing and does the contract on the property. That's the executor for the estate. In this case, it was a friend of the decedent's. And so I asked her, I said, hey, why is it that your friend bequeathed this house to you? He said, well, my friend had terminal cancer and he really had no family, and I was the one that took care of him. And so as a thank you, he did a will and he bequeathed the house to me. I said, well, that's really nice that you did that for your friend. And it's also very nice that your friend took care of you. So I remember I was buying it at the time for probably around $97,000. And the title was ready. I called her to come into the office to close. And when she showed up, man, she was nervous wreck. And I said, hey, why are you so nervous? You should be happy. You're getting a big chunk of money today. She goes, I know, but I'm nervous. I said, why? She said, well, I had to pay the lawyer so much money to do the paperwork so that I could sell you the house. I said, well, so you did it prior to meeting me, correct? She goes, yeah. I said, if you don't mind me asking, how much money did you spend on the legal fees and paying the lawyer? She said, well, so far I paid him $19,000. Well,
What
and,
were her
and
proceeds?
what's that?
What were her proceeds?
Her proceeds after paying everything off were probably low, like 93, 92,000. So, I mean, she still came out ahead. So she spent
Yeah, yeah, but he
to
ended up
get
with 20.
93.
He ended up with over 20%.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Almost, well, actually, more than 20%,
yeah.
if you do the math.
Wow.
And so I thought to myself, I said, well, wow, what if she didn't have the money to raise the estate? What would she have done? I said, hey, just like FYI, you know, um, I would have done what the lawyer did
Crazy.
and done it for nothing and still bought your property.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
goes,
that's fine.
really?
Oh, I got this. Yes, mine. That's where the receipt's gonna get sent. Yes, yeah. Thank you, Rob. Okay, go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
I said, really? No, she said, really? I can't believe that. I said, well, I do it all the time. She goes, oh, I wish I knew you before I spent all that money. I said, yeah, that'd been a lot more money in your pocket. Plus, like, I can't imagine what he did that much different than what I would have done. So what is it that he's actually charging you for? You know, and that's not to say that lawyers don't create value for people. I just
Right.
couldn't understand why she paid that much money. And the closest explanation I have is he was charging her for a percentage of the value of the estate.
And at the time when she signed that contract, when they mention percentages, it's just a percentage. It's not a dollar thing. And,
Right.
you know, just
Well,
by
the
her.
crazy thing is she paid it up front too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sad. Um, and then the other one is a long story on 21st Street.
Well, no,
Where
that one's way too long. That one's not resolved. I
that needs
my
its own time slot.
yeah, that's a whole. Can you think of one that actually, because that's still incomplete? Can you think of one that we completed? Because you have like a crazy memory.
I mean, we've completed, many. Uh, let's go back to 57th Street in September of 2021. Patty brought it to our attention, where the seller, uh, the estate, the
Yeah.
administrator, had put the property into her name,
Oh, okay, yeah.
uh, and which kind of poses an issue.
What was the issue? Remind me.
Well, the administrator, after she opened the estate properly,
Okay.
just recorded the deed
Into her name.
to her name. Now
And
you
what's
can
wrong with that?
elaborate. You can elaborate.
For those people listening, they go, "What's wrong with that?"
Mm.
So what's wrong with that?
You could say better because I'm thinking of the next step. Go ahead. You explain it.
Well, so if you raise an estate and you want to sell a property, you can sell it as a almost like an officer, as an administrator and executor, and you just sign a deed, and whatever's on the property is on the property. But the minute that you transfer a property into your name from an estate, then let's say there's a lien against you from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for unpaid taxes,
IRS.
or IRS, or who knows what, or from a
Yeah.
lawsuit, or from a credit card. Well, then when the title company pulls the title report, they pull a search on your name as well. And if you have a lien or a judgment against your name, then that has to be paid off. Correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because your social security number is on the estate docs. So
Right.
you can't get it confused because my name is John Smith.
Right. What? So on that deal, what problem did that create? I don't remember.
Well, um, uh, she had to prove that um, that the other heirs, she had to get them to
Sign.
sign off on it. Okay.
Right.
Uh, what's it called? When they relinquish their rights to the
Um, yeah.
state.
So letter of renunciations.
Yeah, so she had to get letters of renunciation signed, which sometimes is not an issue. Most of the time, it is an issue. Um, because you're asking somebody not to take money that's owed to them. So,
Yeah.
in this particular problem, they were out of state, and, so it took a couple of weeks. But there was also the issue of when I had went there and contracted the property, took the picture, so forth and so on. It was a vacant property,
Right.
which had a lockbox.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the second time I went, but I did notice a weird type of illegal electrical hookup,
Right. In the
which
basement.
is not the norm in a vacant property.
Right.
And um, and it was done in a way where I've never seen before. So when I went the next time and tried to open the door, something was holding me up from the inside. And that was a very nice squatter who was a relative of the executive
Yep.
and was told that she could stay there.
Yep.
And she
By
was an
who?
old,
Well, that's what she claims. Did anybody actually tell her she could stay there?
it was a gray area. She was supposed to not be there at that time,
Okay.
but originally she was. So, and then her family members got involved. Uh, and it was, not even a week or so before Christmas.
Yeah.
So I said, here's the deal, there was no threat. I mean, we were
She was a very
speaking.
nice lady. She's a very nice lady.
Yeah. And um, talked to her family members. I said, I'm not, going to do this, to your mom. I said, why are you here? I said, because I just spoke to your daughter and she lives 3 blocks away. And she said, you lived with her. You moved from her place into a vacant house with no heat in the winter.
And illegal
So,
electric,
and illegal electric that's hooked up to a blind woman's house next door who has no idea.
which could cause a fire, by the way.
So I called the electric company, put them on notice that this was occurring.
Yeah.
So I had a thing of, do I shut this lady's electrical or do I try to save the lady next door who has no idea?
Yeah.
Who's
She's blind.
who was 83 and 100% blind.
Yeah.
Um, and I'd let her know all that. So I said, here's what I want to do. I want to meet you in the middle. And the day after Christmas, um, you're going to, she had all her belongings in boxes. Like she moved her stuff in from her daughters because they weren't getting along. And the son, and day after Christmas, because the next day, the 27th, was closing day. And um, she called me on Christmas night. We exchanged pleasantries. Merry Christmas. And, Mike, thank you very much. Um, I know she was kind of embarrassed. This gave her $300 as a Christmas present, brought her card to the house that night, Christmas, which she used to give her son to rent a U-Haul, which arrived at 10 a.m. the next morning. We helped her pack up, and that was that. Normally, they don't work out that way,
Yeah.
but um, uh, but sometimes in the right position they do. So that's how that one worked out. So, uh,
So let's
we were
just so the
we
audience kind of understands this, because um, so we helped straighten out the estate because the owner
right,
had not, I don't say illegally, but unlawfully, we'll say,
right,
put the property in her name. when she really didn't need to, which created a complication. We helped straighten that out. And
I think
also,
they have more control that way.
right,
I think they
also
have more control, or they're trying to, or they believe that they could just sell it, put all the proceeds in their
in their
pocket
pocket. Yeah,
without
right,
letting anyone else know.
correct, right. So for those of the audience that doesn't understand, when you're given the authorization by the court as an administrator and executor over an estate, it's your job to act almost as not only like the CEO of a corporation, but also almost like a lawyer. What do I mean by that? You're sworn in as an administrator or an executor, and if there's other people on that have an interest in that property, you're supposed to act in their best interest. Okay, looks like Mike dropped off the call, which is okay because we're gonna wrap up this podcast. I hope that this information was valuable to the audience and gave the audience a little bit of an insight into all that goes into uh, selling a property out of an estate and all the intricacies therein. So I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. I hope this information provided value to everyone, and I'll see you the next time.